Surfers' Paradise, Australia is a land of incredible beauty. It's inhabited by strange creatures and stranger sports. The Australians know how to have fun. Today, it's the Indycars Down Under in the Australian Indycar Grand Prix.
Welcome to an international version of Flashback to the Track. James, we're on the bottom side of the earth today. We're upside down, down under, talking about some racing in the great country that is Australia. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. I mean, I'm not down under. I'm just trying to figure out what time zone Australia is in compared to my time zone to figure out what time it would have been when I would have watched this live, this event.
I can tell you the east coast of Australia, since you're on Eastern time, is 15 hours ahead.
Okay, so I would have been like a full day ahead.
It's tomorrow there right now. Yeah,
I would have been in the future, but I wouldn't have known the past.
Yes. So Y2K happened there first, like 15 hours before it happened to us. So
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah,
if you think about it. Yeah, because then it's like, you know, people have 15 hours to like relax. Like, remember 2012 when everyone's like, oh God, this hour.
And I was like, what time zone? What time zone? That was the first thing I said.
Exactly.
Exactly. What time zone? Time zones didn't exist
in
ancient Mayan times. So like, you know, yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Punched a bunch of holes in your theory. But this week we're, you know, getting our didgeridoos out and drinking some Fosters. And we're talking about the incredible 1993 Australian Grand Prix, but not F1. Kart, James. Kart on the streets of Surfers' Paradise in Queensland, Australia.
Yeah, that's right. Darn right, karts. Because you know why, Mark? Karts have Grand Prix. I think this was a great era because, like, well, even today we hear Grand Prix as titles. I mean, like, the one in Nashville was the Grand Prix, St. Pete Grand Prix. I think it's just an honorable name to bestow upon open wheel racing. Open wheel racing deserves to have Grand Prix. Just saying.
I would tend to agree. This is an epic circuit, though, that we're talking about. We're talking about the Surfers' Paradise Street Course. I believe this is the original layout of the Gold Coast or Surfers' Paradise Street Course. 4.47 kilometers, or if you're American, 2.79 miles, 12-turn street course. High speed, James, high risk. It's the best kind of street course. Not a lot of runoff, very tight. If you make a mistake, you're in the wall. And even with the rolling chicanes, these karts, they're flying through the streets. And it's just an absolutely beautiful setting for a motor race.
Yes, that's right. The Gold Coast is, and we're not to be confused with the Gulf Coast of Florida, though they sound the same. That one letter does make a big difference. And of course, Mark, location. This event began back in 1991. John Andretti won the inaugural Grand Prix, and it was always a great international stop for kart on their schedule. The schedule, like, then merged the series up in 2008, and unfortunately, Grand Prix was over, and Ryan Briscoe was the winner of the final Australian Grand Prix. It's fitting that the final Aussie race was won by an Aussie.
Yep, Mr. Ryan Briscoe.
Yeah.
Notable winners of this race, though. Let's go into that.
Yeah, Mark, we got some notable winners. We got some international stars here. You got Emerson Fittipaldi, Sebastian Bourdais, the only driver to win this Grand Prix twice. So great job for Sebastian there. Paul Tracy, your man, international fair. Is that like pride in your country to see Paul Tracy somewhere? It's like, that's Canadian. It's awesome.
At a time, yes. Maybe not so much now.
Maybe if you were in this period with your
back then,
glasses on.
Now it's like, oh, hey, it's Paul Tracy.
Yay. You could wrap it up. Sorry.
I'm a Greg Moore, man. Also, Scott Pruitt has won this race, and Jimmy Vasser, Mr. James Vasser. So yeah, and like you said, the only guy to win this race twice is Sebastian Bourdais, which is pretty phenomenal. They had this race for like 18 years and nobody ever won it twice. So it's kind of cool.
And here comes Bourdais. Yeah.
That was when he was winning.
Haas too.
That's when he won every race. Like from 03 to 07, when he won every single race on the kart schedule. It was unbelievable.
It did, I'll be honest, it did make kart seem a little less interesting to me at that time period.
He caused the merger himself. He was too good. They were like, "Oh, we got to merge the series. This is lame."
I know, but it sucked that he wasn't the big outcome. He wasn't the biggest benefactor of that outcome, you know.
Well, he went to F1, so his bank account was a huge benefactor. But the 1993 running of the Australian Grand Prix is what we're talking about today. Was the most hyped event in the race history. James, there were over 800 accredited international media reporters attending this race. And just for perspective, the only event in the schedule with even near that many reporters is the Indy 500. So I've never been accredited at the Indy 500, but I've heard it's like everybody and his brother gets a media pass. So I can't imagine 800 reporters at this street circuit to cover the attention of the man, F1 world champion Nigel Mansell, who's now competing in kart, won the 1992 F1 world championship, left F1, and is now competing in Indy cars. So that's why they're all there. They got to cover this incredible story.
Yeah, and to start the weekend off, Mansell, I mean, he becomes the first driver in 37 years of IndyCar kart competition to win the pole in his first career start. So Mansell's driving for the powerhouse Newman Haas racing team, and it's going to be teammates with Mario Andretti. So, I mean, it's not like he's coming into this with like a very foreign, you know, team and surroundings. He's coming into one of the biggest organizations at the time and has a really great teammate with veteran Mario Andretti. So, you know, I don't know. Nigel Mansell is probably going to be a threat in 1993. It's like, we know what happens in 1993. He wins the championship.
2 F1 world champions as teammates in kart. Incredible.
Can you imagine that happening today?
Can you imagine the merchandising? Like Grosjean's an IndyCar now, and he never won a single F1 race, and it's like the biggest thing in the world. You know, like, can you imagine if like Lewis Hamilton at the end of the season wins the championship? It's like peace, and he like goes and competes in IndyCar at like Barber, you know, International Raceway in an IndyCar. Like, it's crazy to think.
I think that would be truly the most accredited season. Like, you think like what happened with like Jimmy Johnson was big because, you know, the hype that happened this past season. Think about that, man. That's gonna be crazy. Or Alonso, man, at Indy.
Well, when Alonso was at Indy, big. There were people there only to cover him at Indy. Like, lots of people were there just to cover that story. So yeah, it's pretty crazy that it's like
similar to this. Yeah.
Exactly. Like you're reigning, and that's when Alonso's F1 career was on a downswing because he was with McLaren and they weren't good, and came over. And if he doesn't grenade that motor, he probably wins the Indy 500 that year. Like, he had the most dominant car. But yeah, this is crazy. Just to think that this happened, that like Mansell's like, I'm tired of this like Williams crap, and he leaves, and then he's like, I'm gonna race Indy cars, and then, as spoiler alert, he wins the IndyCar championship in 1993 as well. So he's the reigning world champion of both for like a 2-week period. So, because he's the man.
Yeah. And also, not only is he reigning of both championships, he's also knighted man. So truly, he is on top.
Oh, sorry, Sir Nigel. Sorry, I was looking up if Nigel Mansell was knighted or not, and he's actually not.
Oh man,
sorry.
I keep thinking he was. Was that at the?
He was awarded an Order of the British Empire, but he was not knighted by the Queen.
So he was like at a ceremony where someone was knighted, but he just got a medal.
Basically, for his charity work. The only ones that were knighted were Sterling Moss, Jack Brabham, Jackie Stewart, and Lewis Hamilton.
Good for him, doing his civil service. Another driver we have to mention for the 1993 season is the reigning champion of the IndyCar World Series, Bobby Rahal. Him and his team have a new car and a new chassis for the 1993 season, but they weren't planning on having it at Surfers Paradise, and they've only had a couple of days to test it. So it's not really a good power plant chassis combination. They're still working out the kinks and bugs, and race 1 is already here. It's very interesting that happens, Mark, but it's a full year of championship. So they're definitely going to continue to develop that car throughout the year.
Yeah, and this was like, so they're developing basically a proprietary chassis for their team. It was like a Hogan chassis. And it was interesting because at this time in kart and IRL, all throughout the 90s, we saw, if you look back even just at a driver's Wikipedia page, for example, you'll see that they drove multiple different chassis in one season, different engine combinations, because teams were always trying stuff. They were developing throughout the season, just like in F1, how you see teams bring car upgrades throughout a season. They were doing that in IndyCar as well, because back then it wasn't a spec series like it is now, where everyone has the same car. You were doing your own development. You were figuring out a chassis that worked, finding an engine combination. And that's actually leads into talking about the next guy, which is Robbie Gordon. So he made a handful of starts in 1992 for Chip Ganassi, and now he's going to take on the full season of the IndyCar, the PPG IndyCar World Series, driving for AJ Foyt in the number 14. But he had to get blessing from the Ford Motor Company, who's a contracted driver to drive for Foyt's team. And speaking of cars, he has a 1992 chassis. So he does not have a new 1993 chassis, but some people in the paddock think that maybe the chassis and engine combination that he has is actually going to be a winning combination early in the year because it's a proven chassis. So
it is. Apparently it's an old Chip Ganassi chassis too.
Yeah, they have old Chip Ganassi cars they bought from the year before. So Robbie Gordon, let's see what he can do in old equipment. I'm sure he's going to do just fine because he's an absolute baller.
Another driver making his first full season of kart competition is Canadian Paul Tracy. He'll be competing full-time for the captain, Roger Penske. Now, Tracy is replacing the 4-time Indy 500 champion, Rick Mears, and will be teammate to F1 champion, Emerson Fittipaldi. At this time, Mark, Paul Tracy is like lightning in a bottle. He's like something that you just got to try to capture and rein in. So much raw talent, just needs to be able to make the car last the whole race. He's crazy to watch, and just to see how cool and like confident he is at this age. Also to see Paul Tracy with hair. Be honest, Mark, I have not seen Paul Tracy with hair a lot in my life.
Did not last long, but yeah, he needed to work on his racecraft
and really. Glasses,
yes.
Yeah,
I went to contacts later. I love when race car drivers wear glasses. I love it. Like when Bourdais has glasses on, I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Nerds driving race cars.
Those round glasses were dope too. Maybe Paul just didn't want to look like a hipster. Maybe somebody called him a hipster and he punched that guy out and he was like,
yeah, somebody called him a nerd contacts. And freaked out.
Also, I think like contacts were big in the 90s too. So
well, if you lose a contact like while you're driving, you're screwed. You know what I mean? Like, so it might be dangerous.
That's a crazy scenario. Yeah, you get something in your eye
happens,
water.
Like, so that's why the glasses are always going to be a better option, or just learning to drive without them. Because I heard an interview with Garth Tander, the supercars driver. He's like, I never wear contacts because what if something happens? Right. So I just wear glasses when I drive. I'm like, that makes perfect sense. So final guy we got to talk about is Michael Andretti, James. Michael Andretti, the son of Mario. He's not in kart this season. He is in F1. So Nigel Mansell came to kart. Andretti left for F1. And he's racing for Marlboro McLaren alongside teammate Ayrton Senna. So a lot of people forget, but Michael Andretti did compete in F1 for one season. So he's over there living that high flying, wine and dine, globe-trotting F1 life.
Yeah, unfortunately though, in this race we do get to see how his first Grand Prix went, which was not so beautiful. Just a shame, man. It's like you kind of wonder what could have been if Michael would have been able to have had more time to develop as an F1 driver. I mean, he came in to F1 so far into his career. You don't really see that happening anymore. I mean, maybe Seabass and Wilson were like the last couple of guys.
The broadcast, James. Let's talk about the broadcast. So we always like to talk about the broadcast.
Yes.
This is a live ABC broadcast with images brought to us by Australian Channel 9. Our announcers in the booth for this race are the legendary duo of Paul Page and Uncle Bobby Unser. And on pit road, we've got Gary Gerald and Jack Carute. This is like the primo IndyCar broadcast team. This is like top shelf IndyCar broadcast team.
Oh, I'll just take this team for any ESPN Motorsports broadcast. Again, shout out to @Paul Page 500, man. Always good to see him still active in the world. Also brought to us by Channel 9, there is a cool 90s wearable technology that driver Danny Sullivan will have. It's a heart chart, Mark. It's going to monitor his heart rate in real time, or as close to real time as they can get it, because it doesn't seem to be quite as accurate. So a little chart pops
from like
up.
2125 to 180 and back and forth like throughout the race. It's like
It has its moments. We'll check in on it periodically throughout the broadcast. But yeah, anytime we're on board Danny Sullivan's car, we have a little heart chart. So under the pace laps, he's pretty calm though. It's probably going to climb higher throughout the race. And the race itself, it's a 65 lap race. And your fuel window, Mark, it's probably about 22 laps. So there is quite a disparity between the Chevrolet and the Ford engine. It seems like the Chevrolets are a lot more thirstier than the Fords.
A lot of talk about fuel mileage on the grid before this one of who's going to be in the best position, because you're going to stretch your fuel. You might be able to make it on 2 pit stops, but you might have to make 3. You might just come in for a splash. So, and James, how did we watch racing before we knew the drivers' heart rates? I don't know how we did it. You know, I think our lives have been are so enriched getting the Whoop band data now that we know what Denny Hamlin's heart rate is when he's in a race car. You know, it's changed my life.
It's funny to me that like this used to be very private conversational stuff of like, oh, I'll keep this to myself. Now it's just like, yeah, flex, look at my heart rate. This is what I was doing. It's like, okay.
Look at Jamie McMurray's heart rate. Hey man, you got to follow like Jimmy Johnson on Strava where he posts his data from the race. And because it thinks he went bike riding and then he was going super fast. It's great. But yeah.
Oh,
back on topic.
That's yeah. Anyways, we're going to go to a start. It's a rolling start and kart. Here we go. Green is out and Mansell, he's going to get a horrible start, man. He's not used to rolling starts. In fact, Fittipaldi and Tracy are going to swarm all over the F1 champion, those Marlboro Team Penske machines. They will go by him. And that's about all the action for that first, lap or two, other than Robbie Buell. He goes for a quick spin. It's a very clean first couple laps. Emerson Fittipaldi, he's going to take the lead. Paul Tracy second. Mansell slips back to, he's back to 4th at this point. So yeah, Mark, talk about that, man. He just, I guess didn't have his tires up to temp, or probably just didn't get the timing right. It's probably been analyzed a million times over, but
he's just not used to it.
Yeah, he gets a bad start.
He's not used to it. He's used to standing starts. You practice your whole life. He said he hadn't done a rolling start since karting when he was a kid. So standing starts, I think standing starts are like the epitome of like what we should be doing. Standing starts are the best. I love standing starts. Remember that one time Indycar tried a standing start for the first Grand Prix at the Indy road course, and they all crashed off the line. So like, yeah, let's not ever do that again. Let's stick to rolling starts. But standing starts are awesome. Like I think it really shows the driver's ability to like react, get the car up through the gears, not spin the tires. It's just different. I like it, but yeah, not used to it. Unfortunately, the 2 Penske's get by him. Robbie Gordon gets by him. Man, watching my guy Robbie Gordon pass an F1 world champion. Oh, that just feels so good. And that old car, that old Chip Ganassi car. Yeah, just out there fighting him. But once we get underway, we're going to get some reports on pit road from Jack Arute and Gary Gerald.
Let's go pit side and Jack Arute.
Well, already Emerson Fittipaldi has had 2 problems today. In the warm-up period, he had a problem getting full boost out of the car. The Penske team solved that problem. Then when they got ready to bring the car to the grid, they tried to start it. They found a fuel leak. A leak underneath this small O-ring. They located it, they replaced the O-ring, they brought the car to the grid. But they are very concerned about fuel consumption. You said the window of opportunity here would be around lap 22. Not for the Penske team. They say they'll bring their cars in as early as lap 17. It seems the Chevrolet C engines swallow a lot of fuel. Let's check in with Gary Gerald.
Jack, over our shoulder, the colors distinctively A.J. Foyt. A.J. not here today, but the young man in his car, Robbie Gordon, at age 24, has made quite an impression already this weekend. He told us just before the start of this race he was going to ride for the first 50 laps, not challenge. Not so. We've already seen him move up a spot. He's 3rd. He's been all over the racetrack in practice and in qualifying, dirt track fashion. He should be very exciting to watch today. I hope A.J.'s heart is up to it wherever he's watching back in the States. Paul?
So, James, the Chevys are a little thirsty. They might need a little bit more fuel than those Ford engines, as you mentioned earlier. So we might have to come in for a splash near the end of the race, or maybe we'll get some yellow and that'll help them out. And Robbie Gordon has the keys to AJ Foyt's IndyCar, James, and he is just putting on an absolute show, as he always does. He's the showman.
He is dirt tracking that thing, using up track limits. He is having a ball. But once the broadcast actually cuts back to on-track coverage, we see a couple cars are losing control into a braking zone. It's Scott Goodyear and Jimmy Vasser. They're both going for a spin. Apparently, there is some fluid on the track, and the track's quite blocked, actually, in that section of the circuit. There is a local yellow out, but the leaders are trying to make their way through those stranded cars. But fortunately, everybody's able to rejoin the race. No further incident other than that local yellow. Let's check in with Danny Sullivan's heart chart, Mark. I mean, we got a little bit of update. It's at 132. It's nice. It's visually doesn't really say it's in real time. I mean, it could. What's 132, like a brisk jog?
Probably like if you're going for like a brisk walk, you might get up to like 130, or hiking or something. Running's probably going up a hill, 160 area. So yeah, probably
Danny Sullivan is
some anaerobic exercise, like speed walking.
I mean, it I don't know. It could speak to the uphill battle he might have to go throughout the day. And whoa, a safety vehicle just jumps out in front of him and driving out on the course. Mark, I don't know if his heart rate went up there. Mine did, because that was sketchy, man. It's an interesting thing about street circuits. Like, they just, anything can happen, I guess. Even safety workers popping out of nowhere.
They don't throw full course yellows. They're just gonna go out, get the car. It's like, we got lots of time, go grab it. Like, so little dangerous. We don't do a lot of that anymore. We usually just any slightest thing now, we throw a full course yellow, which is just better for safety, I think.
Yes.
But next up, we're going to see a pass for third after we return for the commercial break, as Nigel Mansell gets back around Paul Tracy. And Paul Tracy just kind of locked right up on corner entry. We see the replay. He just skids past, and Mansell just drives right past him. So kind of a nice, easy pass for Mansell. And now Tracy is slowing in the pit lane as he pulls into his box. Slow movement, James, is going to tell the team this could be terminal. And it kind of is, as his rear wishbone needs to be replaced before he can return to the race. He's going to lose lots of laps and be way behind. So I guess that's what happened to Paul Tracy as he skidded in front of Nigel Mansell.
Darn, that driver can just outlast his own equipment. If only can keep it under him. Oh, well. Now we're going to see how smooth Nigel Mansell really is behind the wheel of the IndyCar on this road street circuit. I mean, just riding on board, it's like his car is floating over these curbs, but they must be aggressive and they must hurt. But still, he's just taking on the circuit like it's nothing. And the car just moves around so much in this era. It's so crazy to watch him at work, as he has now run down Robbie Gordon for the second position.
That's going to give second place to Nigel Mansell. And now Little Al Unser Jr., he has spun on the race course, and it looks like Scott Brayton might have helped him spin, as we see a replay later on. Could have made some contact, and it takes several laps as they're sitting in like a runoff area to get their cars back. Again, no yellow. Figure your shit out. We're not going yellow. We need to keep this race green. So they end up getting refired, and they do rejoin the race. And meanwhile, fastest driver on the track is Nigel Mansell. He is stalking Emerson Fittipaldi, the leader, riding in the slipstream of that Marlboro Penske car. Mansell's driving carefully, but how much more patience does he have, riding behind Fittipaldi?
Not much, Mark. There's a battle for the lead after returning from a commercial break. Mansell smokes them going into the corner as he makes a bonsai move for the lead on Emerson Fittipaldi. But that corner was under a yellow flag, wasn't it? I have to agree with Paul Page, though, Mark. In the moment, this was a pretty cool pass, and it was fun to watch.
Well, it's controversial pass for sure, but for a moment, the pass going to stand as Mansell leads the race over Fittipaldi and Gordon. Bobby Unser even gives a great excuse to Nigel, saying Mansell made the pass before the leaders got to the yellow flag. But a few moments later, Mansell is going to get a stop and go penalty for that pass, passing Fittipaldi under the yellow flag. So penalty for the F1 world champion.
unfortunately. But fortunately, I guess, because not only are they going to serve their penalty, Mark, but the crew is actually going to make a pit stop. So it's going to work into their strategy, I guess. This is interesting. Maybe we should hear from Billy Kimscher, the series assistant of operations and technical director, so he can explain the technicalities of this rule.
Paul, I've caught up with IndyCar official Billy Camphausen. And Billy, can you give us the official position on the stop-and-go penalty for Nigel Mansell?
Nigel received a stop-and-go penalty for passing under a yellow condition somewhere on the racetrack. He was called on a black flag and brought in. We assessed the penalty by a stop-and-go, and during that stop-and-go penalty, he can do anything under a normal pit stop condition.
So it's well within the rules for a team to decide to take advantage of the stop-and-go and change tires, add fuel, and make it longer.
It is purely up to them.
Paul?
Well, that explains everything. Thanks, Bill. And sweet shades, man. And those were some sweet Oakleys.
Yeah, that rule's really dumb, and I'm glad that's not a thing anymore. You shouldn't be allowed to service the car while you're serving a penalty. It's supposed to be a negative
rules were
effect.
written one way. It was written one way?
Stupid.
And now it's written another way because of things like that. It's classic. I love when someone spends that much time studying the rule book to find any little advantage they can, because that was a perfect execution of that. So Nigel's back out on track. Now he's fifth, Mark, so he probably could still make it a two-stop race, even though he has a thirstier engine that's sipping up more fuel. So he's coming back out a few laps before everybody else will pit, and he's on hot tires, Mark. What advantages is he going to get over the competition before they even make their pit stop?
Classic undercut, man. If you're the first person to pit, you're going to come out on hot tires, or get your tires up to temperature before everyone else pits. So you're going to be running laps fast with brand new tires while they haven't pit yet. Then when they come in, you might jump them because you've run 2 or 3 laps really fast with your new tires by the time they come out, and then you can get in front of them, because track position is everything, because as much as you say, well, then they've got fresher tires and they're behind you. Yeah, but you're in front and you can make your rear bumper very, very wide. It's easier to pass people in the pits than on the racetrack. So classic undercut. So the penalty, again, just benefits him so much in this race. It's a change the rule. But man, that montage though, Genesis.
Yeah, that Genesis montage before we come back from commercial break is beautiful. I wish we could play the song, but Phil Collins probably doesn't want us, or probably his record company. Either way, the running order is as stands: Mansell, Fittipaldi, and Gordon after the cycle of pit stops. The broadcast does highlight also some pre-race attractions. This was cute, Mark. Interesting to see some American affair over in Australia.
Yeah, I really like that your taxpayer dollars paid to fly the police officers from Indiana and their motorcycles to Australia to entertain the fans over there. That was the first thing I thought of. I'm like, I'm glad we flew all those motorcycles over. But they're bringing a flair of America and Indianapolis to Australia. So money well spent.
Hey, it wasn't my tax dollars, dude. It was whoever lives in that county in Indiana. Your money was well spent there. I hope your city gets more attraction and eyeballs on it from that. Even, what is it, like almost 20 or 30 years after the fact. Beautiful. Either way, it's just a big flex. It's our police force just flexing their abilities in front of other countries now on an international scale.
Yeah,
big flex.
Of course.
Back to racing coverage. It's been 10 laps after Nigel Mansell has made his stop, and he's back on pit road for fuel and tires. Mark, this is unscheduled. It seems like Mansell has a puncture, or feels like he has a puncture, because after the team reviews all the tires, they're like, no, dude, you don't have a puncture. Get out there. We got to make this now a 3-stop race. So I don't know. I think at this point, he could probably perfectly cut it and make it to the end, but we'll see.
And we're getting back on board now. This is really all I care about. We go back on board with Danny Sullivan so we can get a heart rate check-in to see where he's at. He's in the low, around the 30s, peaking into the low 140s. I love when it doesn't show the number. It just has the chart. And Bobby Unser's like, I don't know what that means. Put the number up. Great stuff.
It's just like a line everywhere. It looks like I don't know. I don't know what he could be doing at that heart rate, but he's doing something. He's all over the charts. Anyways, little Al, he's been having a miserable day. We've highlighted his early spin, but that also means that his car owner, Rick Gills, is having a miserable day too. Let's hear from him. He's going to be standing by with Jackaroo.
Well, I think my plan is just to go home after this race, Gary. We've had a horrible time, and just hadn't really been our weekend. We've struggled and everything, but the team's kind of hung in there, and we thought we had a good run with Al. And I really don't know what happened out there, but unfortunately we lost 4 laps, and right now we're just gonna do the best we can and try to finish.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks at Phoenix. That's for sure.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
All right, thank you, Rick. Now,
talk about a man who wants to get the hell out of Australia. He has not had a good time. Another story, though, an interview from a fascinating tale from the 1993 Grand Prix. It was Buddy Lazier's nose.
Gary, right behind me, Buddy Lazier is undergoing his second stop of the afternoon. Lazier is very thankful that he's in the race because, come here, look at this. This is the nose, all that's left of it, that he had on the front of the car when it crashed yesterday in practice. Now, you might say, no big deal, you can just replace it. Well, the problem was they were in such a rush to secure sponsorship, they built up a show car and used their last nose on the show car, came to Australia only with the nose on the car. So here's what they had to do. They located a nose in Las Vegas, Nevada, late yesterday afternoon. They took a friend who lived in Las Vegas. He picked up the nose from a collector. He carried it in his hands by air to Los Angeles, California. They then tried to put it on a United Airlines flight. Unfortunately, the flight had already departed for Sydney. The people at United Airlines called Qantas. Qantas said, well, mate, our flight hasn't left yet. They rushed the nose over there from United. They literally took the brand new nose, put it in coach, I hope, strapped it in a seat, and flew it over here to Sydney. From Sydney, it made its way to the airport here in Gold Coast, and then a helicopter was dispatched, and the nose was delivered at 9:30 this morning, attached to the car just in time for Buddy Lazier to take advantage of the final practice before the start of this race. I guess you could say that Lazier is in this race with a little help from his friends.
Buddy Lazier.
Imagine,
Mark, have you ever had to get
for a nose on an airplane, like so it can fly in the cabin? I always wonder if they're making that up. Like, did it actually fly in the cabin? Did they actually buckle it in? Does the nose, like, if they lose cabin pressure, does the nose put on its own mask before assisting others, or how does that work? You know, like,
I mean, I can see how it sits in a cabin if it's like, and it probably had a few flights on a smaller aircraft, but yeah, I don't know. I
highly doubt that thing was just on a
tale.
Qantas flight flying in, you know, but maybe.
Excuse me.
Buddy Lazier's nose. Like, what a crazy story. And there's all kinds of stories like that from all throughout racing about, like, oh, we had a last minute engine, it had to get flown in, or, you know, it had to like go across the creek on a makeshift raft, you know, so we could get it here in time. But how much of that's really embellished, you know?
I think a bit of it is embellished, but I think a huge part of it speaks volumes to the scope and undertaking there is to have an event overseas for this series. Like, all these teams are based in America. They don't travel internationally with their equipment, so this is all foreign. They don't have a lot of stuff, so yeah, and so early in the season, so yeah, it really speaks volumes. Like, crazy. Why did the kart people think this was a good idea, Mark? This seems like a horrible idea if it's a wreck fest. You wrecked your car at the beginning of the year,
and that's the
you're
issue
over in Australia
with these international like races, right? When you're not usually an international series, it's like we had to freight everything over to Australia. Then if something happens, like, what do we do? We're not F1. We didn't bring a building with us, you know, like, we don't have that kind of money. But anyway, back at the front, it's Emerson Fittipaldi, Robbie Gordon, Mario Andretti, and Nigel Mansell. If you look closely at Andretti's car, you can see he's missing a piece of his front wing, so they should just fly one over on a Qantas flight. The entire right side of the front wing is gone, which means that is not going to help the handling on that race car, especially at a track like this, you know, a street course where you're turning as much as you are. Mansell makes his way by his teammate Andretti, and he would regain the lead through the cycle of pit stops a few laps later. And during those stops, Robbie Gordon had a really long stop and he lost the clutch, which has cost him on the track. But he hangs on to third, and he said over the radio, do we have to pit again? Because I just lost the clutch. Because he doesn't really need the clutch, James, at this track. He just needs it when he's in the pit lane.
Exactly. Those kids nowadays, as Bobby said, they don't use the clutch. Oh, Uncle Bobby. Speaking of those kids, how about Eddie Cheever? He's going to go for a wild ride through the chicane, right over it. Jeez. Talk about the pass in the grass. I'd call that the leap over the gravel trap, Mark. Eddie Cheever is crazy for keeping that car under control as he re-enters the racing circuit. And you know what? He gains 2 positions by doing that.
He cuts the track and gains 2 positions, and he doesn't get a penalty, which is amazing. They're like, hey, if you're dumb enough to ramp your car over the gravel trap, you deserve those 2 positions. So
the most amazing part is he didn't herniate a disc by doing that. Jeez. Anyways, also, since nothing's really changing up front, let's hear from Nigel Mansell about exactly what it's like, the differences driving an F1 car and an Indy car.
Well, there's a lot of differences. I mean, very quickly, it's a turbocharged engine as opposed to an aspirated engine, so there's a little bit of a lag for the power. The cars are significantly heavier, 500 pounds in point of fact. We have a normal gear shift, whereas the Formula One car is automatic. And then we have a pop-off valve as well that we have to regulate, and a whole host of other things. But basically, the driving style in the slow corners is similar, with the exception that with an Indy car, because they're so much heavier, you have to be almost a little bit more precise, because if you miss the apex, you don't really get a second go at it, because the car is so much heavier, it's less responsive to change. Whereas a Formula One car is dancing all the time on the knife edge, and therefore if you actually miss the apex, you can maybe have 1 or 2 more goes at it. Otherwise, I'd say it's more or less identical.
And now, that's what everybody wants to know. What are the differences between the 2 cars? And like you said, it's a lot more physical driving the Indy car as opposed to the Formula One car, right? So you even hear that now. When Grosjean came over, he was like, I had to get stronger in my upper body because I didn't have power steering and stuff, right? It's very different. And the cold tires, no tire blankets. Cold tires. As soon as you leave the track, you gotta figure that out. So learn how to get tires up to temperature.
It's kind of like Formula One's like an orchestra and like a symphony, and then like IndyCar is like jazz. It's a little all over the place. You make it work, but
I don't know if that's effort. A great analogy or a terrible analogy, but I'm proud of you.
I think it's a great terrible analogy.
All right. Back to actual racing coverage. It's time for the final stop of the day as Mansell and his team go fuel only, James. No tires. It's a 9-second stop.
That's strategy.
And he returns to the track. He's got those hot tires, so he's going to have more grip compared to everybody who's changed in tires, at least over the first couple laps while they get him up to temperature.
And meanwhile, we're going to go back to Danny Sullivan's heart chart. He's raced in 13th for quite some time, and it's reading 170 beats per second, Mark, or beats per minute. It'd be a lot, but beats per second. Jesus.
He'd be dead.
But yeah, he'd be dead. He'd be on he'd be on something. But he's been having a heart stopping race, if you want to call it that. And Bobby Unser believes that the heart rate at this point more is reflected on his fatigue and the fact that Danny's tired. I don't buy that, Mark. I feel like his heart rate's up because, he knows the end of the race is near and that adrenaline's kicking in to fight to the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Push through.
He's got to, get up to like maybe 12th by the end of this race. But now
he wants to set a fast lap for himself.
Set the fast lap. Do you get a point for that? It's like F1? No. But now the tables have turned. Mansell is no longer the fastest car on the circuit. It's Fittipaldi and Gordon behind him with close second and third drivers close on the leader. The laps are winding down. Now, is this because Nigel Mansell's saving fuel? I think he's just maybe run a little bit slower. He had a 9-second lead. So
who knows? But it's on the final lap, Mark. That 9-second lead still holds over second place Emerson Fittipaldi. The Newman Haas racing driver might have enough fuel to make it to the finish. He's backed off his pace. As Uncle Bobby said, he's probably making that look dramatically close. He knows he has a 9-second lead. Just let it wither away as he comes across the line. Has he saved enough fuel to earn his first victory? He crosses the line first, and he'll take the victory in the 1993 Australian Grand Prix for the Indycar World Series of 1993. Did I mention it's 1993, Mark? Wow, amazing. And you know what? He runs out of fuel a turn after taking the checkered flag, Mark. That is calculated, again, perfectly. Great strategy by that team. They knew they had to get 23 gallons of fuel out of that container and into that car, and they did. They got as much as they could, and it literally ran out just after taking the checkered flag. Crazy.
As they say in the booth, give this whoever came up with that fuel number and that strategy, give them a raise, because they got just enough fuel to make it to the end. And unlike the Dallas F1 Grand Prix, where Nigel Mansell ran out of fuel short of the line and tried to push his car across, this time he has enough fuel. Redemption.
Sweet redemption. In fact, let's hear from the man himself on the track.
Nigel, congratulations.
Thank you. That's fantastic, and a great credit to the team.
What went through your mind when you had that tire that you thought was going down? He's getting the congratulations now, Carl Haas. Pretty evident that what went through your mind when you had the tire go down? You had to come in for the extra stop.
I was disappointed, but it was my own fault because I clipped the curb probably too hard and punctured it. But I was even lucky on the last set of tires. I hit the barrier real hard coming out of one of the chicanes with about 15 laps to go, and I mean the tires and wheels are real strong.
Concern about the fuel at the end. Describe it.
Oh boy, I mean I had to get 1.9 on the fuel meter for the last few laps, and I was just about doing it, but then coming out the fast chicane on the last lap, the engine started to quit. I just put it in fourth gear and prayed I could get around the next corners, and as you can see, I just got past the straight and it stopped completely at the end.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Always great when you do that post-race interview from the inside of a van that had to pick you up on the circuit because you couldn't drive your car back because you ran out of fuel. You know, kind of a weird interview.
Beautiful. What?
But
it would have been cooler if someone would have picked him up and gave him a charity ride back to the paddock. But then again, I don't think
that wouldn't have been allowed. I don't think they'd have been like, nah.
That's a very long circuit with a lot of straightaway for that. It's going to take a while.
So Nigel Mansell, first race, first win, 1-for-1, perfect record in IndyCar. Just what you expect from an F1 world champion.
That's exactly what I think everyone expected. And I'd say that works right into our next topic. What did we learn? What did we learn from this race? And I think one thing I learned, first off, Mark, people love to visit SeaWorld in Australia. I don't know how many segments there were where we saw either Nigel Mansell, Bobby Unser, or Al Unser Jr. just like swimming with dolphins at SeaWorld. People love to go visit SeaWorld when they go to Australia. And, you know, in some races, you want to see a specific outcome. And in this race, we had that. People wanted to go see Nigel Mansell win this race and be dominant. Maybe there were some doubters out there too. People, naysayers, you know, everyone wants to see greatness be toppled. But at this period, you know, Nigel was like unstoppable, I feel like. And you see how many people were there to cover him, how many people wanted to see this happen or see something happen to him. So, yeah, I think that kind of speaks testaments to this race a little bit. Some races you want just to see that happen.
Imagine if like Mansell had like blown a motor on lap 2 and all the 800 accredited media were like, great. Now my race report is not interesting, but they got exactly what they needed. Nigel Mansell won this race. And yeah, like you said, it's just the right guy won. You're like, I really want Mansell to win this race from the pole in his first IndyCar race. It'd be amazing. But even better than that, James, is Robbie Gordon finished third. Podium finish for Robbie Gordon, driving for AJ Foyt in the legendary 14 car. My guy, God, the guy could just drive anything, you know. God, what that's even more important than Nigel Mansell's win to me. So
he's like a Rick Mears, straight out of the desert vehicles and into the Indy cars. Boy, Michael Kranifis has got himself a strong contender in the pipeline. I wonder how that will mature.
Yeah.
We all know how that goes. But yeah, I mean, it's, to me, what's really cool is like he's so multifaceted at this point. You know, he's so young and he's driven sports cars and had success. He's driven off-road vehicles and had success. Now he's jumping into Indy cars and having success. Kind of being fearless too, because like, you know, you're going from all these extremes too. Like they're very extreme forms of motorsport. Like all forms of motorsports are extreme, but like extreme consequences, extreme high risks, as we mentioned earlier. So took it in stride and conquered this race, man.
And it's just like going to the top level of everything every time and competing at a high level, right? Like it's just incredible. But James, now what we really have to do is just rate this race. And I know what rating I'm going to give it. So I'll go first. I'm going to give this race a 10. This is a 10 out of 10 race, man. We're in Australia. We're on one of the coolest circuits of all time, Surfers Paradise. Unbelievable circuit on the Gold Coast. We've got Nigel Mansell, the F1 world champion, winning the pole, winning the race on a crazy fuel strategy. No yellow flags, wall-to-wall action. We've got Robbie Gordon finishing third. We've got another F1 world champion finishing second. At one point, there was 3 F1 world champions running 1, 2, 3. Like, this is a great race, man. 10 out of 10.
I thought to see the sights. It's such a visually stunning track. Like, you know, seeing the overhead shots, I think are the best things to monitor or view with the race. I also really enjoy the fact that Paul Page and Bobby Unser really play off of each other so well. And Jackaroo and as you mentioned, Gary General, like that whole crew is just so nice to see in a race. Doesn't matter if you're watching IROC or drag racing or, you know, IndyCar coverage. You know, it's just fun to see that group tell you the story. So I give it a 9. It's just enjoyable. It's fun. Only an hour and a half of your time, not too much. And there's 2 different versions that are uploaded too on YouTube. So each is different. One has a better, I feel like, audio version, and the other one has a better video version. So, you know, take and pick which one you want to watch. So I just recommend watching it. It's fun. It's a good one. And also it's cool to see all the young names, you know, like we say young names with this period, there were younger faces with Paul Tracy, Robbie Gordon, even guys like Scott Goodyear, Bobby Buell, and, you know, others. I think it's really cool to see that because, you know, names become recognizable.
It's a good race, man. So 19 out of 20, if you do the math. I was a little bit more generous than James was, but, you know, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Anything in Australia, 10 out of 10. They just do it right over there. They're the best circuits, man. They know their
Mark
stuff.
Is going to move to Australia.
Honestly, as soon as they reopen,
he is the most biased Australian. He's the most Australian Canadian I know.
I can't get enough of it. I think we're going to do a supercars race soon. We're going to have to. So,
I mean, we will. I think we need also to get supercars blessing on us doing it, or whoever holds the content so we can post it. Haters.
They can't stop us from doing a podcast. We can do whatever we want. It's fair use, James. It's news. Come on, fair use. We're reviewing it.
If anything, we might review an iRacing supercars racing event in Australian time zone. Just watch one of those races and be like, all right, Mark, we're watching some iRacing.
We should do an iRacing event review. That'd be amazing if we reviewed like an esports race. That'd be crazy.
It'd be funny if we were just making live commentary during like an esports race.
Yeah, somebody should hire us to do live commentary for an esports race. I'm down for that.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to botch a lot of names. It's going to be Botchamania here. A lot of mispronunciation, a lot of sponsor mess ups, team mess ups. It's going to be fun. A lot of random things going to be said about people. Whoa, look at that chips and cracker move right there. I'll tell you, Mark, he got a full bowl of soup with that. Just, I don't know. You got to come up with a crazy, zany line. You got to make something ownable. Something you've never seen before.
I was just looking, James, quickly at the 93 kart calendar. They went to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 street circuits. 6 street circuits, only 4 natural road courses, and 6 ovals. What a schedule, man.
I think it spoke volumes to like how that series saw that bringing the events to like places where people were helped the draws, and then helped the events like longevity to have like that TV title. You know, people want to broadcast a race. What was the Canadian race? Did they have a Canadian race that year?
They had two. They had one in Toronto and one in Vancouver. Paul Tracy won both. Oh no, sorry. He won Toronto. Al Unser Jr. won Vancouver. I was reading that wrong.
Well, either way, I think with both of those places, those are stops that you want to televise. I mean, the US stops where they have like the Michigan Grand Prix, probably the streets of Detroit, and then I don't know, something else.
They went to Surfers Paradise, Long Beach, Detroit, Belle Isle, the Cleveland Burke Lakefront Airport, one of our favorite racetracks, exhibition place, of course, in Toronto, and the streets of Vancouver. So,
I mean, I would not make the airport course a street course. That is an airport course. That is its own thing, because you can't have the same interaction and the feel of a street course at the airport course because of the restrictions.
And fun fact, this was the only road or street race that Nigel Mansell won that season. His other 4 wins were all on oval tracks, which he had never raced on before.
He came in and he dominated on that. That's a good thing for him. Good for Nigel. It's like Arie Luyendyk. He was known as a road racer, and then he came in Indycar and just started whooping butt on ovals. It's fun to see that. I wonder if Roman Gorsan will ever do that.
Yeah, he's doing the whole schedule next season. He's going to come in and just smoke people because he did Gateway this year and he was really good. Now, I just want to
see him like what. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say I want to see him. I was going to say I want to see him like whip butt on like Texas or like a big oval, like just go out and like conquer it. Like Indy's one thing. That's its own test, but like Texas would be big.
Well, Scott McLaughlin finished second at Texas this year. He'd never run on an oval before. I mean, maybe it's just like not knowing like the dangers of it or not understanding, just like you just, whatever. And you just drive, right? And you do pretty well.
Yeah. You just don't know if you're doing it right or wrong. You're just doing it. So that always helps. The not knowing.
Well, James, that is our look back at the 1993 IndyCar Australian Grand Prix, or what is it? The Australian IndyCar Grand Prix, or the exact title, but yes, the Grand Prix with IndyCars in Australia.
IndyCar World Series. Wonderful look back. I like this one. This is a classic event. A lot of notable names people can recognize and great coverage. Fantastic racing as well. A lot of lockups, smoking those tires.
10 out of 10 race for me anyway. But yeah, great one. Had a lot of fun doing this one. A huge thank to our partners at Blue Emu for everything they do for us to help us bring you these podcasts. It's an incredible product. It works fast and you won't stink.
All right. It provides you with maximum strength relief for your tired muscles and joints. Great product. Find it at your local retailers. You can order it on Amazon. It's a great stocking stuffer. Perfect for stockings. And then perfect for where you put it afterwards. So yeah, Blue Emu applies directed though. Anyways, that'll do it for this week's episode. Mark, probably have to think of something more creative next time. I don't know how we can top this.
I know it's gonna be hard. Like I said, we'll have to do an esports race or something, or a stadium super trucks race.
Just something out of this world. I don't know. Maybe drone racing.
Drone racing. Drone racing. It's legit. Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you in the next one.